Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today. And though you've come through many obstacles.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to The Ghost and Molly McGee, episode 14. So, luckily we're actually able to get to this earlier this week. As you may remember, last week we had the issue where none of the sites I use normally were, like, getting the episode up. Like, within the normal time, within the normal speed it normally does get put up at. And by Tuesday, it still wasn't up on any of them. So I had to use this other site, a Spectral McGee, in which I was able to, in which they have all the episodes like pretty much right away on there. So I was able to do it through there, but it was complicated. There were issues with like the video sticking and then having to switch between videos to get to the second half of the episode. And it's just like, I was really hoping we wouldn't have to do that again. Luckily we don't. At least for this week, the episode is up within time to record. Without it being, you know, day before, but still. So last time we had twins. We had Pete's twin brother and sister come over and pick on him. They came over to hang out to see the family and all, and they were picking on him. They were being very rude to him. And this caused sobgoblins to appear, which are these little spirits that amplify sadness. And even though it's not directly said, could be implied to cause bigger issues that stem from that, such as a full-on depression or even other things. Not good. Despite this, the Sobgoblin plot with Molly and Scratch trying to get rid of them was honestly just not as interesting as Pete having to deal with his brother and sister. And I kind of feel the way it was resolved could have been done a little better. It wasn't my favorite episode of this series. It wasn't terrible, but I just feel like it could have been done better. And yeah, we also had a trial, a mock trial put on by Molly to prove Scratch's innocence after he is accused of eating an anniversary cake that Pete was making for Sharon. And we eventually just go through all these hoops, finding out that everybody in the house had some connection to what was going on, except Molly, really. But that no one had actually done it, and it's eventually found out in the end that it was Jeff. Because, alright. There was a lot of good comedy in that one, like with Daryl somehow having a lawyer. Like, I'm still not, I get the joke, but like he literally had a lawyer there, and I'm just like confused as to like this kid's like what, 12, I think, maybe somewhere around there. He's a kid though. How the fuck does he have a lawyer? Like, even if it's a family lawyer, it's like, why would she be there for this? To humor him? That's the only thing I can think of, because it's like, he wouldn't have a lawyer to himself. That's not how anything would work. By any means. So it's just, it's a good joke, it's funny, but it's really confusing if you actually start to think about it. So I don't know what to expect with this episode. either of the two minisodes within. I am kind of hoping that we do get some like plot relevant stuff somewhat soon. It doesn't have to be right away in this episode, but you know, this is episode 14. I don't know how many episodes are planned for the season, but if it's going to be like the same as a lot of other shows, somewhere in the early to mid 20s, they really need to do something soon. Like with the Ghost Council or whatever, it's just like something needs to happen. Like trying to inject story just entirely at the end, pretty much, I don't think will work as well. And yeah, they've had little bits here and there of like, oh, showing the Ghost Council threatening Scratch. You gotta scare people here. You gotta fill your quota, otherwise we're gonna send you to the fog of failed phantoms or whatever it's called. I think that actually might be what it's called. I think I might have gotten it right. But either way, there is hints of that. But like that seems like just like little hints at a long ongoing thing rather than, you know, an actual storyline. Like there just hasn't been much of anything worked with. And mind you, this series has still been great. I've been enjoying the shit out of it. As I've stated multiple times, it's a comfort show to me, and it's very fun, even with all the episodic stuff. Like, even though some episodes don't hit quite as well as others, it's still just a very enjoyable, comforting, lovable show that I very much love and appreciate. But I don't know, I just feel like in this day and age, with shows like this, like you compare to Amphibia or The Owl House, this is definitely within the same vein as those kinds of shows. Like, yeah, have some episodic stuff, but you also need to have story stuff. Owl House balances this excellently, and Amphibia, not as much from where I'm at least. But it does have some story stuff within there, and it got to story stuff midway through season 1. So there was at least something to tide you over there. It didn't just wait until the end. So I'm just kind of worried that this series is going to wait until the end of the season to actually do something. And I'm worried that it's going to like just have like almost a Gravity Falls like thing going on. But even Gravity Falls did it better. Because Gravity Falls, in its first season, was almost entirely just episode of the week stuff until the very end. It's like the last 3 episodes were story stuff. Because the one before the 2-part finale was Bill Cipher, like the introduction of the true main villain of the series. And then the 2 episode, I think it was 2 episodes at least, 2 episode finale of season 1 is related to Gideon. Unless maybe the episode where Bill appears was part 1 of that. Maybe. That could be the case. But either way, the last 2 or 3 episodes of the season, you know, you get Bill Cipher, you get his introduction, and then you have Gideon trying to steal the shack and everything. And almost succeeding. And then season 2 delves into the story stuff a lot quicker, like basically right away in the first episode, by having it revealed that Grunkle Stan knows everything that's going on. And he always did. And then you get more stuff sprinkled throughout season 2, even with the episodic stuff that does still happen. Even before the big world-changing events that eventually come into play. Season 2 is very story-focused, but Season 1 almost not at all until the very end. And I kind of don't want Molly McGee to just be that. Like, to just like, okay, Season 1, we're just going to get all the episodic stuff out of the way until maybe the very end. And then the next season we'll start focusing almost entirely on story instead. Because it's like, it just, I don't know. for me, that feels kind of unbalanced. It makes each season feel unbalanced. I feel like you need to have a little bit of both. Again, Owl House does this great. Wonderfully. You get some story progressing stuff all the time. Even if it's not like the full focus of the episode, you get parts of it that do progress the story wonderfully. Even if it's just with specific characters at a time. And then there's certain points where it like hits this moment where it's like, okay, let's actually get very fucking serious now and make everybody cry. And season 2B of Owl House is probably going to do a lot of that. If we're being honest. People are already expecting that. But yeah, Owl House really does get that balance right. Which is one of the biggest reasons I love it so much. But, and again, even Amphibia is getting a better balance than so far Ghost and Molly McGee. And again, I'm loving what we're getting of Ghost and Molly McGee. There's been some really standout episodes that have just entirely knocked it out of the park. The holiday episode, for example, was just phenomenal. It was absolutely brilliant. And there's other episodes like that in this series too, but at the same time, you can't deny that there's really been no progression of story here. There's been some continuity here and there, but no actual progression of story that has stuck with anything. And I'm just kind of a little disappointed by that. So hopefully we get that soon, and hopefully we get at least a little hint of it before the end of the season. But honestly, as long as the series continues to remain as good as it is, I think I'll be fine. But I want it to be better. You know? It's like I'm good with what it's doing, but I want it to be better. Because I want the best out of every show. Right now, like, Owl House is one of my favorite shows, honestly. And with season 2B coming this month, it could easily shoot up to be in, like, top 3 for me. If it really sticks the second half of the season. Which I very much believe it probably will. Ghost and Molly McGee, while I really love it, I don't know if I would even put it in my top 10 currently. I really love it, but, and again, wonderful comfort show for me. But I don't know if I would put it in my top 10 favorite shows, considering it's not doing anything yet. And that is a thing for me, as you guys have probably realized watching this channel for enough time. Any of you who are new, yes, that's a thing for me. I tend to enjoy serialized story-based shows more than I do episodic stuff. But I also like shows that can balance that out, that can do both. Shows that can really just hammer in both sides to that. Again, like the Owl House. There are plenty of episodic adventures in the Owl House, but just as many important ones that further progress the story. And so far, Ghost of Molly McGee is entirely pretty much focused on the episodic stuff. So I'm just hoping. It doesn't need to be as dark as, like, say, Owl House or anything. It doesn't need to get as dark and intense as that, but I want some story. You know? I just want something that's going to really, like, do something with this series. There's so much potential. There is exceptional potential with this show. It could be on the level of the Owl House. No joke. But they need to capitalize on that. They really do. But in the meantime, we're just going to get this going. We're going to hope for the best with whatever this episode has in store for us. As I said, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from this one. I've luckily avoided spoilers in the day or so that it's been out. So yeah, I guess we're just gonna see. We're gonna find out. We're gonna hope for the best. And with luck, we'll get it. We'll get more great content no matter what. And hopefully we'll actually get some story here. Because the only real story stuff this series has had has been more just character stuff. It hasn't actually progressed the story too much. The biggest thing I would say, real quick before we actually get this going, because I almost did forget to mention this, the one big thing that they did so far was like 2 episodes ago, I think, with Andrea. Having her kind of take this Pacifica turn in comparison to Gravity Falls, have it revealed that she's just trying to impress her terrible parents, her terrible rich parents, and that she's actually not a bad person, which, I mean, again, as I've said before, she's never been really that aggressively, like, antagonistic at all. So, but getting to see that, and even getting that, like, really small thank you to Molly after Molly helped her, that was one of the biggest actual moments in this series that I feel like that's going to progress things a little bit, but only in terms of character stuff. I feel like there's still a bigger plot that can actually be explored here. So I did just want to mention that. But either way, let's just get this going, and again, hope for the best. So, when the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. I'm going to talk about them in order, but I do want to say real quick that it's like, the second episode almost felt like a tease to me. Or the second half of the episode, rather. And I'll talk about what I mean in a bit here, but let's actually, let us go in order. So the first one, goats. I really do love goats. Like, there are certain animals that I just really get a kick out of, certain animals that I just think are really adorable for multiple reasons. There's like animals like bunnies and pigs and whatnot, certain species of monkeys. Certain animals I just really find adorable and awesome and, you know, sometimes even hilarious, depending on what they do. And goats would be up there for me. I just think goats are really cute. And yeah, we get to have some goat fun in this episode, even making fun of the, not really making fun of, but utilizing the acronym version, GOAT, greatest of all time. They utilize that within the song, and it's like, oh, okay. I'm gonna have to listen to that song again, though, to really get a feel for it. Maybe once the season is done, I'll make like a list ranking all the songs in this season. That would be fun to do. But anywho. So, Molly and a couple of her friends and classmates and all are tasked with training up a young goat. They have to take the goat home, train it up, and get it to basically follow commands by utilizing what Scratch kind of rightly describes as a bribe. It's a legitimate training method that is used on many different kinds of animals. You know, utilizing treats as an incentive in order to get the animal to follow your commands. Like, that's a legitimate thing. And the clicker, I think I've seen or heard of that being used before, but not often. It's a great idea, though. The problem is Molly just really is super, like, into the cuteness of her goat, which she names Totes, which is, funny. Just the funny rhyming scheme of that all. Um, she's just into the cuteness, and it's so cute that she just wants to spoil it. So she keeps giving it crackers. She keeps giving the treats without giving any commands or using a clicker or anything like that to get it to actually do anything. So because of this, Totes ends up becoming fat and lazy, not following any orders, and just not only expecting food at every turn, but becoming obsessed with it, unhealthily so. They even end up getting kicked out of the fair because of because of Totes' obsession with food that ends up causing some trouble, and upsetting Scratch a little too. And it's like, I understand kind of this idea that this episode was going for, with the entire, like, you have to, when raising or when training an animal, or even raising another person, a child and whatnot, you have to have some level of command to you. Like, if you just give them everything they want at all times, it's like, it's not going to end well. You have to have that responsibility there. And again, as I mentioned in the reaction, I've worked with kids before, and I have a very hard time doing that. I tend to be very nice and just agreeable towards people in general, but especially when like taking care of kids and everything, like I've done again in church and places like that. I have a hard time being tough on them, because I don't want to make them cry. Like, that is one of the worst fears for me, basically, when helping take care of a kid. I do not want to make them cry, because that would make me cry. I would genuinely break down if I made a kid cry. I could not handle that. I would hate myself if I did that. But I do understand that kids do oftentimes need a little bit of that, a little bit of toughness to get them on the right track, especially when they're very young. And animals oftentimes need that as well. Using treats as an incentive to get them to act, to get them to follow orders and stuff, is a pretty normal thing, and it's reasonable. I've done it for Piper on occasion. So it's like, I've actually done that kind of thing before. Never to like an actual like full-on training degree, and I've never used a clicker for that purpose, but yeah. It's a very valid message here for pet owners, and even for parents and prospective parents. And hell, even kids watching this are going to realize why their parents or parental figures are tough on them sometimes. It is necessary. Obviously, there's a point where some people take it way too far and go into abusive territory, but there is a little bit of toughness needed in order to get them on the right track. Again, especially when the kids are younger. So it was a very good episode. It was funny. It was cute as hell. We had some great Libby stuff in it too. I like how like Libby's like getting assertive makes me sweaty, and then instantly right after just like is super commanding to her goat, which is like, Libby, I love you. You're still my favorite character. It's great. It's great. But then we had the second episode here, and this one, I say it teased me because it seemed like it was going into something that was going to be very big and important, and then just kind of at the end reeled it back. So while Pete and Sharon are out for a camping trip together, just the two of them, Grandma Nin comes in to take care of the kids and to celebrate a Thai festival with them, where they honor spirits with a feast, which Scratch is super ecstatic about. However, Grandma Nin wants him to invite his friends. We know that he really only has one quote-unquote friend, being Jeff, and so he does reluctantly agree to invite Jeff as well. While all this is going on, Molly and Daryl are having a just needless like competition with each other on who can make the best or the most dumplings, and it's like, this is just completely needless. It wasn't bad, it wasn't executed poorly or anything, it's just these two are just being dumb. Because it's like they're competing because Grandma Nin like said my favorite little helpers, and they like, oh, I'm the favorite, and it's like, she said helpers, she used plural, she was talking about both of you. This is not a competition. Where did that come from? What? You're being dumb. But yeah, so Scratch reluctantly invites Jeff and tells him not to tell anybody, or he says not to tell nobody. Jeff cleverly realizes that's a double negative and thinks Scratch meant for him to invite people. Because Jeff can be surprisingly clever, but also really dumb at the same time. And it's like, it's literally the exact same, like, relevance, too. It's like, he's clever in the fact that he realized that was a double negative and understood what that meant in response to that. But, like, he's dumb in thinking that that's what Scratch actually meant. And it's like, okay. So Jeff ends up inviting a bunch of other ghosts, ones we've seen before and everything included. And this ends up upsetting Scratch because he wanted to eat all of the awesome food. And now all these other ghosts are eating, he's not getting a chance to. And then he gets sucked back to the ghost world by the council. And it's like, oh, what's going on here? And they start like, oh, they're going to make fun of him for misspelling scare on his report. But then they notice the food and want to go investigate it. And I'm thinking like, oh, is something actually going to happen here? Is this actually getting into story stuff? Which, yeah, we knew the Ghost Council was going to be involved in story stuff. But again, we really haven't been actually exploring that yet. It's just been hinted at for the future. So they actually come to the living world, which is like, oh, and it's actually really fucking scary. And Scratch has to have the others pretend to be serving him out of fear, with all the food and everything, in order to get the council to not end him, basically. The council eats, except I guess the head of the council, he's just kind of stands there and is spooky. But the rest of the council eats. They really like the food. Like, they just genuinely love the food. And then they leave. And there's this episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. I know, kind of weird thing to just suddenly bring up. But there's this episode where the Cutie Mark Crusaders are trying to get Big Mac and Cheerilee together. It's a Valentine's episode, except in the universe it's called Hearts and Hooves Day. They use a love potion to get the two together, and there's a point where they're about to kiss, but then they don't. And Sweetie Belle pops out of a bush and yells, "Oh, come on!" And it's really fucking funny. it is such a perfect delivery. When the Ghost Council left, I had that kind of thought in my head. I almost had the same reaction out loud. Because it teased us. This episode actively teased us, making us think that we were going to actually have important plot stuff happen. And then the Ghost Council just leaves. No change to the status quo. Nothing actually progresses with it. We just get more of the hints, more of the teasing about what's to come in the future. Which, I'm glad we're at least getting something with that. But at the same time, it's like, it doesn't actually progress anything. It doesn't actually move an ongoing plot along at all. And that's my issue with it. It's a cock tease. It's a complete cock tease. And I'm so fucking annoyed by it. Because there was so much potential to just do something there. Not necessarily have Scratch be taken away or anything, but just something to happen. Like, even if maybe when they're watching, like, the head of the council, he turns around, looks at Scratch for a second, like, the eyes, I guess you call them, squint. And, like, he just stares at Scratch as he goes through the portal. That would have been enough for me. Because that would have hinted and progressed something that the head of the council is suspicious of what's going on. The other council members seem to just kind of accept it eventually. And they left on, I guess, good terms, you could say, while continuing to make fun of Scratch for his spelling error. But if they had just done that one thing, it would have actually, like, progressed something. Even if just the tiniest bit. It would have been literally the smallest thing they could have done. But it would have been something, at least. And I'm just hungry for more, you know? I'm like Scratch in that regard. I'm hungry for more. I want some actual plot here. And I feel really bad for Scratch as well in both of these minisodes, but I'll talk about that in a second here. But yeah, it's just, they teased us. They're hinting at things to come, but they didn't actually progress any real storyline. And I'm just kind of disappointed by that. The episode was great. It was still an enjoyable episode. But yeah, I just kind of wish there was more that actually happened. But yeah, I do really feel bad for Scratch, because in the first part of this episode, in the goat one, we had him actually training Pete, which, by the way, was fucking weird still. Like, I don't know, it just seemed Pete act like a dog and getting rewarded with the treats and stuff. Like, there were some cute moments in there, like with the blep and everything, but my god, that was weird. It was funny as hell, but it was weird. But seeing Scratch actually really good at training Pete, I guess, it is just like, okay. And then in the end, like, he doesn't actually do anything wrong. And so he's getting his fried food, and yet he gets punished and just isn't allowed to eat it. The goat eats it instead, and it's like, poor Scratch. And then in the second half, he gets, like, legitimately scared out of his mind with the Ghost Council coming and everything. He is legitimately horrified by them. No joke. And seeing them come in here and, like, the risk of being taken away and banished to the flow of failed phantoms is, like, he is actually afraid of that. Like, legitimately. Partially because of being taken away from the McGees, who he has grown to love. He's a part of the family. 100%. And so he doesn't want to be taken away from them, but also he just does not want to be banished into this flow of failed phantoms, which they haven't really gone into exactly what it is, but I kind of imagine it's like the fog of lost souls from Avatar: The Last Airbender, or actually technically The Legend of Korra. You know, in The Legend of Korra, they have the Fog of Lost Souls in the spirit world, and you actually see Commander Zhao from Avatar The Last Airbender in it, and it's like, oh, that's actually disturbing. Though there was actually a lot of stuff in Legend of Korra that was surprisingly disturbing. But yeah, it's like, it very much makes me think of that. Just an almost inescapable, like, fog, basically, where it just continuously makes you lose your mind. And that is actually disturbing and scary. And so I can understand why Scratch would be afraid of that, if that is what it's like. We don't know if that's what it's like, though. We don't actually have that information, but that is kind of what I anticipate it being like. That's kind of my theory on that, I guess. But yeah, like, and in the end, he doesn't even get to eat any of the food. Like, there's just nothing left for him. And Grandma suggests, we can order a pizza for you. And Scratch does get excited about that. He's like, ooh, pineapples? And it's like, yes, my dude. Pineapples on pizza. Hell yeah. I don't care what anyone says. I love pineapples on pizza. I actually think the flavor balance and even texture balance works really well. Pineapples on pizza, especially with ham, like the salt and the sweet actually work extremely well off of each other. The sharp vinegariness of the tomato sauce as well just really, it's a complementary flavor. It is actively a complementary flavor. It works well together. And mind you, it's just all opinion. Like, if you don't like pineapple on pizza, that's fine. But I do, and I'm glad that Scratch does. But either way, I still feel that he got gypped there. I still feel really sad for him. Because it's like you have all this awesome Thai food, just these beautiful dumplings and everything, and in the end, Scratch gets none of it. He has to kind of settle for a pizza. Which, I mean, I love pizza. Pizza is one of my favorite foods. But if I had the option between just having a pizza ordered out or having awesome homemade Thai food, I would choose the Thai food every time. You kidding me? That's not even a question. Like, that's not even a question. Unless I'm just really in the mood for a pizza, which does happen sometimes, where I'm just really in the mood for pizza. But Thai food is like, of course I'm gonna go for that. You kidding me? I just feel really bad for Scratch in both of these. He gets just unfairly denied food in both of these minisodes. So I'm just like, poor dude. I feel really bad for him. But yeah, this episode was great. Both halves of it. Even if it did tease us with the second half and didn't actually progress anything, I still loved the episode. It was still really intense and actually kind of scary. It really just ramped that up really well. And if that's a sign of things to come, it's like, well, you can see the potential that this series has to get really damn good. And the first episode was just really entertaining. It was funny, cute. Molly is fantastic, fawning over these goats. It's great. It was just a genuinely great episode. And after last week's being not as great as other episodes have been, I'm glad that we got one that's just really, really damn good here. And that's fine if we have some episodes that are not as good as others, but I like that you go from one that's not as good to one that's really good. And again, that's all opinion, it's all perspective. Like, some people might not like this episode, some people might have really loved the last one. It's all subjective. I'm just going from my personal viewing experience, my personal tastes, my personal just overall thoughts on these episodes. But tell me in the comments below, what did you think of episode 14 of The Ghost and Molly McGee? Let me know down in the comments below, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.